The alarm screamed through the bridge of the Times luminous accord asterisk, and Captain Dae-hyun jumped from his chair. His 4 eyes widened as he stared at the main screen. Something massive was moving through Dead Zone 7, and that should have been impossible. "Confirm that reading," he ordered, his voice tight. The sensor officer, a young Korvathi named Mel, checked her screens 3 times. Her breathing tubes fluttered with anxiety. "Confirmed, Captain. Energy signature is off the scale. It's bigger than anything in our database." Dae-hyun had served in the Galactic Council fleet for 40 years. He had seen many strange things in space. But Dead Zone 7 was not a place where strange things happened. It was a place where nothing happened. The Council had marked it forbidden over 10,000 years ago. Ancient records spoke of the Devourers, terrible beings that had destroyed entire civilizations. No Council ship had entered that zone in millennia. Until now, nothing had ever come out of it either. "Where is it heading?" Dae-hyun asked. "Straight toward us, sir." "Well, toward Refuge Point Station. Current speed is..." "Captain, this can't be right. It's moving at 40 times our maximum FTL velocity." The bridge went silent. 40 times faster than Council ships could travel. That violated every law of physics they knew. "Send a priority alert to Council Command," Dae-hyun ordered. "Tell them we have an unidentified vessel of unknown origin approaching Refuge Point. And get me Ambassador Vrelm." Minutes later, the holographic image of Ambassador Vrelm appeared on the bridge. The methane-breathing diplomat looked annoyed at being disturbed. "Captain Dae-hyun, this had better be important. I was in a session with Ambassador. We have a situation." Dae-hyun transferred the sensor data to Vrelm's location. The ambassador's expression changed immediately. His skin shifted from pale blue to dark purple, a sign of fear in his species. "Where did this come from?" "Trying. Dead Zone Sept, sir. That's impossible. Nothing lives there. The Devourers are apparently not the only thing in that zone," Dae-hyun interrupted. "Sir, whatever this is, it will reach Refuge Point in less than 2 hours. We need to evacuate the station." "Absolutely not," Vrelm said firmly. "We cannot show panic. Prepare to intercept and establish communication. I'm calling an emergency council session." The hologram vanished. Dae-hyun turned to his crew. "You heard the ambassador. Helm, set intercept course. Communications. Prepare first contact protocols." G1, the human liaison officer, stood up from her station. She was the only human on the ship, assigned from a small colony on Proxima Station that the Council had discovered only 50 years ago. Humans were new to the galactic community, still considered primitive by most Council species. "Captain," she said quietly, "may I see the sensor data?" Dae-hyun nodded. G1 studied the readings on her tablet, and all the color drained from her face. Her hands started shaking. "Officer G1, are you unwell?" She looked up at him with wide eyes. "Captain, I need to contact Earth immediately." "Earth? Why?" "Because that's one of ours," she whispered. "That's a Sol-class dreadnought from the Earth Defense Force." The bridge erupted in confusion. Dae-hyun held up his hand for silence. "That's impossible. Earth was catalogued 3,000 years ago as a primitive civilization. You don't even have proper FTL technology. Your colony at Proxima only achieved basic spaceflight 200 years ago." Ji-won's expression was strange, almost sad. "Captain, I think there are things about Earth that the Council doesn't know. Things we haven't told you." Before Dae-hyun could respond, the communications console beeped. The officer there, a Zenthari named Cole, announced, "Incoming transmission, sir. It's on all frequencies, broadcasting in over 300 languages." On screen, the image that appeared showed a woman in a dark military uniform. She was human, with short black hair and eyes that looked like they had seen too many battles. Behind her, Dae-hyun could see a massive bridge filled with technology he didn't recognize. "This is Admiral Kwan of the Earth Defense Force Warship Times Indomitable Will *," the woman said. Her voice was calm, but carried absolute authority. "We are responding to a distress beacon from human colonists on Refuge Point Station. Stand aside." The transmission ended. It wasn't a request or a greeting. It was a statement of fact. Dae-hyun looked at Ji-won. "Explain, now." She took a deep breath. "The Council survey ship that found Earth 3,000 years ago. They saw what we wanted them to see. We had already developed FTL travel by then. We knew you were watching. We decided it was safer to let you think we were primitive. Why? Because we weren't ready to meet the galaxy yet. We needed time to grow, to prepare. So we stayed in the dead zones. The places your people were too afraid to explore. We built our colonies there. We've been there ever since." Dae-hyun felt his world turning upside down. How many colonies? 40 major clusters. About 600 systems total. 10 billion humans, give or take. And this warship? The Times Indomitable Will Times is a Sol-class dreadnought. It's 47 kilometers long. It can move at speeds your ships can't match and has weapon systems I don't fully understand, even though I'm human. And Captain." She paused. "It's not even close to being our most powerful ship. It's a patrol vessel." The communications console beeped again. Ambassador Vreln's image appeared, now in the Council emergency chamber. Behind him, Dae-hyun could see the 12 Council leaders gathering in panic. "Captain Dae-hyun," Vreln said urgently. "The Council is mobilizing our fleet to Refuge Point. We cannot allow an unknown military force to simply enter our space and make demands." Ji-won stepped forward. "Ambassador, please listen to me. The humans on Refuge Point were taken 3 months ago by slavers. 78 people. They're civilians, scientists, and their families. Admiral Kwan is coming to get them back. That's all she wants." "Then she should have filed a proper request through diplomatic channels," Vreln responded stiffly. "How?" Ji-won asked simply. "You didn't know we existed until 2 minutes ago. How were we supposed to file a request?" The ambassador had no answer for that. "Ambassador," Dae-hyun said carefully, "if this warship is as powerful as Officer Ji-won suggests, perhaps we should consider allowing them to retrieve their people peacefully." "Absolutely not," Vreln said. "The Council has maintained order in this galaxy for 40,000 years. We will not be dictated to by an unknown force. The fleet will establish our authority. If this Admiral Kwan wants her people, she will submit to Council jurisdiction first." The hologram vanished. Dae-hyun turned to Ji-won. "Can your Admiral Kwan be reasoned with?" Ji-won looked at the sensor readings showing the massive warship approaching. "Admiral Kwan served in the Outer Rim Wars. She's fought pirates, raiders, and worse things you don't have names for. She lost her entire family to slavers when she was young. Captain, I don't think anything in this galaxy will stop her from getting those people back." Dae-hyun sat down heavily in his chair. In 2 hours, the most powerful fleet the Council had assembled in centuries would meet a human warship from a civilization they thought was primitive. He had a terrible feeling about how that meeting would end, and he suspected that after today, the galaxy would never be the same again. Council historian Thelmos rushed into the emergency chamber, his 6 legs clicking rapidly on the metal floor. He carried ancient data tablets that hadn't been accessed in thousands of years. Ambassador Vreln looked up from the war table, where holographic displays showed 73 Council warships converging on Refuge Point. "Ambassador, I have the original survey reports from Earth," Thelmos said, breathing hard. "The records from 3,000 years ago." "And what do they tell us?" Vreln asked impatiently. The survey ship Times Dawn Seeker Times reported finding a Level 2 civilization. They observed primitive chemical rockets, early satellites, and basic radio communications. Standard protocol was followed. Earth was marked for isolation until natural FTL development. So they were primitives, Vreln said with satisfaction. This human officer is lying. I don't think she is, said a quiet voice from the corner. Everyone turned to look at Nari, the human cultural attaché. She had been silent during all the emergency discussions, sitting calmly while the council panicked. Now she stood and walked to the center of the chamber. The survey ship saw exactly what we wanted them to see, Nari said. While your times Dawn Seeker times was watching our chemical rockets, we already had 17 FTL-capable ships in orbit around Mars. We just kept them powered down and hidden. FTL. Capable. FTL. FTL. That's impossible, Thelmos protested. Our sensors would have detected them. Nari smiled sadly. Your sensors detected what we allowed them to detect. We had been watching your ships for 20 years before you found us. We knew you were coming. We knew what you would look for. We showed you a civilization that fit your expectations. Vreln's skin turned dark purple again. Why? Why deceive us? Because we studied your council. We watched how you handle new civilizations. You restrict their development, control their growth, and decide when they're ready for the galaxy. We didn't want that. We wanted freedom to grow on our own terms. So you hid in the dead zones, Thelmos said slowly, understanding dawning. The places we marked as forbidden. Exactly. Your devourer legends made perfect cover. You were too afraid to explore those regions, so we built our homes there. 40 colony clusters, 600 systems, thousands of stations and habitats, an entire human civilization, right in the gaps between your territory. Military Director Xanteth, a massive Draken warrior, slammed his fist on the table. This is an outrage. You've been violating council space for millennia. No. Nari corrected gently. We've been living in spaces you abandoned out of fear. We haven't touched your territory. We haven't attacked your ships. We've simply existed where you weren't looking. Vreln struggled to maintain his composure. And this warship? This time's indomitable will, asterisk? How many more do you have? And, quote, Soul-class dreadnoughts. 47 currently in active service. But they're just patrol ships, as Officer G1 told Captain Dae-hyun. We have larger vessels. Much larger. The council chamber went silent. 73 warships represented the largest military force the council had gathered in 800 years. And the humans were calling ships twice that size patrol vessels. What else are you hiding? Xanteth demanded. Nari thought for a moment. We have complete mastery of dimensional folding, quantum slipstreaming, and controlled singularity travel. We've mapped 70% of the galaxy, including regions you've never explored. We've found and studied the ruins of 43 extinct civilizations, and we've been preparing for 3,000 years for the day when we'd need to defend ourselves. Defend against what? Vreln asked. Against us? Against anything. Against everything. We learned from the ruins we found. Do you know what kills most civilizations, Ambassador? Not war. Not plague. Not natural disasters. Complacency. Civilizations that grow comfortable, that stop advancing, that believe they're safe. They stagnate and die. Thelmos accessed more old records. The Vel'Kathin Empire, he whispered. You found their ruins. Yes, Nari confirmed. They conquered the galaxy 70 million years ago. They thought they were invincible. Then something came that they couldn't defeat because they'd stopped adapting, stopped innovating. Your devourers weren't monsters, historian. They were consequences. A communication alert interrupted them. The holographic image of Captain Dae-hyun appeared. Ambassador Vreln, the Time's indomitable will times, will arrive in 40 minutes. Our fleet is in position. What are your orders? Vreln looked at Nari. Can we negotiate? With this admiral? Quan, you can try. But she's not here to negotiate territory or trade agreements. She's here for 78 human civilians who were kidnapped and sold into slavery. Nothing you say will change that mission. Xanteth stepped forward, Then, we make her understand. Council authority. We show strength. Director, Nari said carefully, I strongly advise against threatening the Time's indomitable will *. Admiral Kwan has fought in battles you can't imagine. She's seen her people killed by slavers before. If you threaten her, she will respond. And your fleet will not survive that response. We have 73 warships. Zan Teth roared. And she has one ship with power output equivalent to a small star. Weapons that operate on principles your scientists don't understand. And hull armor, made from materials that don't exist in your databases. Please, I'm begging you. Let her take her people. And leave peacefully. Vreln considered this. His political instincts warred with his survival instincts. If we simply allow her to do as she pleases, the Council loses all authority. Every species in the galaxy will think they can ignore our laws. Your laws didn't protect those 78 humans, Nari pointed out. They were taken from a civilian research station by slavers who operate openly in Council space. Maybe your laws need to be questioned. The harsh truth of that statement hung in the air. Finally, Vreln made his decision. Fleet Marshal Dren Kai will issue an ultimatum. The human warship must submit to inspection and acknowledge Council jurisdiction. If they refuse, we will fire a warning shot. If they continue to refuse, we will use necessary force. Nari closed her eyes. You're making a terrible mistake. I'm maintaining order, Vreln said firmly. That is the Council's purpose. Nari looked at him with something like pity. Ambassador, humanity didn't hide for 3,000 years because we were afraid of you. We hid because we were afraid of what we might have to do if we met you too soon. If you attack that ship, you'll understand the difference. She left the chamber. As the door closed behind her, she sent an encrypted message on a frequency the Council didn't know existed. It was brief. Admiral Kwan, they're going to do something stupid. Please don't destroy them all. In the darkness of space, the Time's indomitable will Times received the message. On the bridge, Admiral Kwan read it and sighed. She had hoped this would be simple. Get in, get her people, get out. But simple was rarely an option when dealing with governments that thought they ruled the galaxy. She looked at her tactical officer, Commander Tay. How long until we arrive? 38 minutes, Admiral. And the Council fleet? 73 ships in defensive formation around Refuge Point. They're powering up weapons. Kwan nodded slowly. She had seen this before. People with just enough power to be dangerous, but not enough wisdom to know when they were outmatched. The problem was, she didn't want to hurt them. The Council species weren't evil, just arrogant and used to being in charge. But she was taking her people home. Whatever it took, tactical, prepare a demonstration, she ordered. Something that will make the point clearly, without causing permanent damage. Yes, Admiral. What level of force? Kwan thought about the 78 civilians on Refuge Point. Some of them were children. They had been prisoners for 3 months, scared and alone, while the Council debated jurisdiction and protocols. Enough to end this conversation quickly, she said. And Tay? Make sure they understand that we're being gentle. The Time's indomitable will Times accelerated, and space itself seemed to bend around its massive hull. On every Council ship, alarms started screaming as sensors detected energy levels that shouldn't be possible. The demonstration was about to begin. The Time's indomitable will Times dropped out of FTL at the edge of the Refuge Point system, and every sensor in the sector lost its mind. Captain Dae Hyun stared at his screens in disbelief. The human warship wasn't just big, it was wrong. Sensors showed the ship existing in 3-dimensional space, but also suggested parts of it were somewhere else entirely. Heat signatures that should have melted the hull were being dissipated through methods that violated thermodynamics. The ship's outer surface reflected absolutely no radiation, while simultaneously producing gravitational waves that bent local space. This is impossible, his science officer whispered. The readings don't make sense. Send them to my station anyway, Dae Hyun ordered. He needed to understand what they were facing. 47 kilometers of impossible technology hung in space before them. The Times Luminous Accord, asterisk, one of the Council's finest ships, was barely 2 kilometers long. The human vessel made it look like a child's toy. On the main screen, Admiral Kwan's face appeared again. She looked tired, but her eyes were hard as steel. Council fleet, this is your only warning. Withdraw beyond the orbital plane. We are here for our citizens. Nothing more. Fleet Marshal Dren Kai responded from his flagship, the Times Eternal Dominion asterisk. The Draken commander was a veteran of dozens of conflicts. He had never retreated in his life. Human vessel, you are in Council space without authorization. You will submit to inspection or be fired upon. This is your final warning. Admiral Kwan's expression didn't change. Fleet Marshal, I have 78 civilians on that station who have been prisoners for 3 months. I am taking them home. Today, if you try to stop me, you will regret it. I have 73 warships, Dren Kai growled. You have one. Yes. Kwan agreed. And if I wanted you all dead, you would be already. Please, don't make me prove that. Dren Kai cut the transmission. He turned to his weapons officer. Fire a warning shot. Target their forward section. Disable their shields. The Times Eternal Dominion Times launched a plasma torpedo, a standard weapon designed to overload enemy defensive systems without causing hull damage. It was the Council's way of showing force without starting a war. The torpedo crossed 200,000 kilometers in 14 seconds. Dae-hyun held his breath, waiting to see what the human ship's shields looked like. The torpedo hit the Times Indomitable Will asterisk's hull and simply stopped existing. Not deflected, not absorbed, not exploded. The weapon just ceased to be, as if it had never existed at all. There was no energy signature, no debris, nothing. The torpedo hit the hull and vanished from reality. What just happened? Dae-hyun demanded. G1 was checking her tablet, her face pale. Null field generator. It's theoretical technology, something our best scientists thought might be possible in another 1,000 years. The field doesn't block attacks. It erases them from causality within a localized space. The torpedo didn't hit a shield. Unaccord, it hit a region of space where the physics that allowed the torpedo to exist simply stopped applying. That's insane, the science officer said. That's human engineering, G1 replied quietly. On the Times Indomitable Will asterisk, Admiral Kwan had not even blinked when the torpedo struck. She had expected this. The Council leaders needed to be shown the truth before they would listen. Commander Tae, she said calmly, demonstrate our position. Gently. Tae smiled. He had been waiting for this. Yes, Admiral. Activating gravitic displacement beam. A single weapon on the Times Indomitable Will Times powered up. It didn't fire an energy blast or launch missiles. Instead, it created a controlled gravitational field that reached across space and touched all 73 Council warships simultaneously. For exactly 3.4 seconds, the laws of physics around the Council fleet changed. Dae-hyun felt his ship lurch. Not violently, not dangerously, but firmly and irresistibly. The stars outside his window shifted. When the sensation ended, he checked his navigation. They had moved 500,000 kilometers. In 3.4 seconds. Not just his ship. Every ship in the fleet. 73 warships, representing billions of tons of mass, had been gently but firmly relocated away from Refuge Point. Damage report, Dae-hyun called out. No damage, Captain, his engineer reported, sounding confused. All systems normal. We were just moved. Dae-hyun looked at G1. She was reading something on her tablet and shaking her head. The energy required to move that much mass that quickly should have torn our ships apart. But the gravitic field was perfectly calibrated to account for our hull stress tolerances. They moved us at exactly the maximum speed our ships could survive. They knew our specifications? Daehyun asked. They've been watching us for 3,000 years, Captain. They know everything about our technology. On every council ship, the same realization was sinking in. The humans hadn't tried to destroy them. They had simply moved them out of the way, like an adult moving children away from something dangerous. It was gentle, precise, and absolutely terrifying. Fleet Marshal Dren Kai was not used to feeling fear, but he felt it now. All ships, power down weapons, he ordered quietly. There was no point in fighting. They could fire every weapon they had, and the humans would just erase the attacks from existence, or move them into the sun, or do something else that their technology allowed, and Council physics couldn't explain. Admiral Kwan's voice came over all Council frequencies. Thank you, Fleet Marshal. We appreciate your cooperation. We will now retrieve our citizens and depart. This does not need to be a hostile encounter. The Time's indomitable will times didn't move toward Refuge Point. Instead, smaller ships emerged from its hangar bays. These smaller ships were still each larger than the Time's luminous Accord asterisk. Daehyun watched on his sensors as the human rescue craft docked with Refuge Point Station. The operation was smooth, professional, and fast. Station security didn't even try to interfere. What could they do against people who had just casually moved an entire fleet? Nari's voice came over Daehyun's private channel. Captain, I'm sorry you had to see this. We didn't want to frighten anyone. But you did want to make a point, Daehyun said. We needed the council to understand. Those 78 people weren't just numbers on a report. They were real people who were suffering. And we were coming to get them, regardless of what anyone said. We just hoped to do it peacefully. On Refuge Point, the rescue was proceeding exactly as planned. Commander Tae had led the boarding team personally. They found the 78 humans held in the station's lower levels, being prepared for sale to various buyers throughout Council space. The slavers had tried to resist. That had lasted exactly 30 seconds before Tae's team disabled their weapons and locked them in their own holding cells. The humans who were rescued looked thin and scared. Many were crying. A young girl, maybe 7 years old, saw Tae's uniform and started sobbing with relief. Are you really here? Is this real? Tae knelt down so he was at her eye level. It's real. We're taking you home. All of you. Admiral Kwan doesn't leave people behind. It took 22 minutes to get all 78 civilians aboard the rescue craft. Medical teams checked them over while the ships returned to the Time's indomitable will asterisk. Not one of them was seriously injured, but all of them would need time to recover from the trauma. Admiral Kwan stood in the landing bay as the rescued civilians disembarked. She shook hands with each of them, learned their names, and promised them they were safe now. When the young girl who had talked to Tae saw the Admiral, she ran forward and hugged her legs. Kwan picked her up gently. What's your name, brave one? Sue, the girl whispered. Are the bad people going to come back? No, Kwan said firmly. They will never come for you again, I promise. She meant it. And every person on that ship knew that Admiral Kwan's promises were kept, no matter what it took. With all the civilians safely aboard, the Time's indomitable will times prepared to depart. Admiral Kwan sent one final transmission to the Council fleet. Council of Worlds, humanity has no quarrel with you. We have existed in the spaces you feared for 3,000 years. We will continue to exist there. But understand this. We protect our own. If Council citizens take our people again, there will not be a warning. There will not be negotiation. We will come, and nothing you have will stop us. Not because we want to fight you, but because we will not abandon our people to suffer. She paused, then added in a gentler tone. We hope for friendship between our peoples someday. But friendship must be between equals, not between master and servant. When the Council is ready to meet us as equals, we will talk. Until then, stay out of the dead zones. They're called that for a reason. The transmission ended. The Time's indomitable will times activated its dimensional drives, and space folded around it. In a flash of light that made sensors scream, the massive warship vanished. The Council fleet was left alone with 73 ships, wounded pride, and the terrifying knowledge that humanity was not what they had thought. And somewhere in Dead Zone 7, Admiral Kwan sat in her quarters with young Sue sleeping on her couch, a warm blanket wrapped around the child. Tomorrow, they would be home. Today, they had sent a message the galaxy would not forget. Humanity had arrived. And the galaxy would never be the same. 3 days after the Time's indomitable will times vanished, Captain Dae-hyun found himself leading an investigation he didn't want. The Council had assigned him to discover everything possible about humanity, and he suspected this assignment would change his entire understanding of the galaxy. Ji-won sat across from him in the conference room aboard Refuge Point Station. She looked tired. The past few days had been hard on her, caught between her human identity and her loyalty to the Council that had raised her. They're calling it the Refuge Point Incident, Dae-hyun said quietly. The Council is divided. I can imagine, Ji-won replied. Some want to pretend it never happened. Some want war. Some want to understand. Which group do you think will win? The scared ones, probably. Fear makes people do stupid things. Dae-hyun pulled up reports on his tablet. The Council has discovered 40 human colony clusters in dead zone regions, 600 star systems, 10 billion people, and every single one is more advanced than anything we have. That's what 3,000 years of unrestricted development looks like, Ji-won said. While the Council was maintaining order and preventing wars, humanity was growing, learning, pushing every boundary we could find. Why? Dae-hyun asked. Why hide? Why not join the Council and share all this technology? Because the Council doesn't want partners. It wants subjects. Every species that joins the Council gives up control of its own development. You advance when the Council says you can. You explore where the Council says you may. Humanity looked at that system and decided we'd rather be free and alone than controlled and safe. A chime announced another arrival. Na-ri entered with someone Dae-hyun hadn't met before. The new human was young, a woman in her early 30s, wearing casual clothes and carrying a datapad. Captain Dae-hyun, this is Eun. She's a physicist from Earth, here to help the Council understand some things. Eun bowed politely and sat down. The Council Science Division asked me to explain how human technology works. I told them I'd try, but honestly, you're missing about 2,000 years of physics that we discovered and you didn't. That's impossible, Dae-hyun said. Physics is physics. The laws don't change. No, but your understanding of them is incomplete, Eun said gently. She pulled up a holographic display showing the basic FTL drive schematics used by Council ships. You achieved faster-than-light travel through hyperspace tunneling. It works. It's not wrong. But it's inefficient. You're using a sledgehammer to crack a nut. She modified the display, showing vastly more complex systems. We use dimensional folding for short distances, quantum slipstreaming for medium ranges, and controlled singularity corridors for long-distance travel. Each method is optimized for different situations. Mada 43. How long have you had these technologies? Dae-hyun asked. Dimensional folding? About 2,000 years. Quantum slipstreaming? 1,500 years. Singularity corridors are newer. Only about 800 years old. The casual way she mentioned centuries of advanced development made Dae-hyun's head hurt. And you never shared any of this? With who? The Council that thinks it should control all technology development? No. Thank you. Over the next week, more humans arrived at Refuge Point. Not soldiers or politicians, but scientists, historians, and cultural experts. They came to explain humanity to a galaxy that had completely misunderstood them. Sung was a xenoarchaeologist who specialized in extinct civilizations. He brought data that shook the Council to its core. The dead zones aren't random, Sung explained to a packed conference room full of Council scientists and leaders. They're scars, 70 million years ago, this galaxy was ruled by a species called the Vel'Cathene. They conquered everything through overwhelming military force. He showed images of ruins that humanity had discovered and studied. Massive structures on dead worlds, evidence of weapons that could shatter planets, and records written in languages that no longer existed. The Vel'Cathene grew comfortable with their power, Sung continued. They stopped innovating, stopped adapting. They believed they were invincible. Then, they encountered something that proved them wrong. Ambassador Vreln leaned forward. The Devourers? There were no Devourers, Sung said simply. That's a myth the Council created to explain regions of space that frightened you. What destroyed the Vel'Cathene wasn't a monster. It was consequences. When you build an empire on force and stop growing, you create the conditions for your own destruction. What destroyed them then? Asked Council historian Thelmos. We don't know exactly. The records are fragmentary. But whatever it was, the Vel'Cathene couldn't defeat it because they'd become stagnant. They had no new ideas, no fresh perspectives, no ability to adapt. Their own success had made them weak. Sung looked around the room. Humanity studied these ruins for hundreds of years. We learned the lesson. Empires that spread through force inevitably create enemies they can't defeat. So, we didn't build an empire. We built a civilization based on growth, adaptation, and freedom. The implications hung heavy in the air. The Council had maintained peace for 40,000 years, but at what cost? They had prevented wars, but also prevented progress. They had kept the galaxy stable, but stagnant. Political upheaval followed quickly. The Council fractured into factions. The Korvathi wanted complete isolation from humanity, terrified of what might happen if they provoked the humans further. The Zenthari wanted to negotiate technology exchanges, hoping to benefit from human advancement. The Draken, proud warrior species, wanted to build up military forces in case humanity proved hostile. Ambassador Vreln found himself in the middle, trying to hold the Council together while his own beliefs crumbled. He met privately with Nari in a quiet corner of Refuge Point. Tell me honestly, Vreln said. Why did humanity really hide from us? If you're this advanced, you could have conquered the galaxy thousands of years ago. Nari considered her answer carefully. Because we learned what happens when species spread through conquest. Sung showed you the Vel'Cathene ruins. We found dozens of other extinct civilizations too. Every one of them followed the same pattern. Expand, conquer, grow comfortable, stop adapting, encounter something they couldn't handle, and die. So you hid out of fear? No. We hid out of wisdom. We knew that someday, eventually, we'd encounter the rest of the galaxy. We wanted to meet you as a mature civilization, not as primitive newcomers you could control, or as conquerors you would fear. We waited until we were ready to meet you as equals. Are we equals? Vreln asked quietly. Your ships are vastly superior. Your technology is centuries ahead. Your people number in the billions while hiding in places we fear to go. How can we be equals? Because equality isn't about power, Nari said. It's about respect. We respect that the Council has maintained peace for 40,000 years. That's remarkable. We respect that you've created a system where different species can work together. We can learn from you, just as you can learn from us. Can we, though, learn from each other? Nari smiled. That depends on whether the Council is willing to change, to grow, to accept that maybe, just maybe, your way isn't the only way. Before Vreln could respond, an urgent alert came through. Sung had made a new discovery in the ancient Vel'Cathene databases, and he needed the Council leadership immediately. They rushed to the research center where Sung had set up his equipment. I've been analyzing the Vel'Cathene final records, he said. The ones from right before their civilization collapsed. I found something disturbing. He displayed images on the main screen. Deep space. But something was moving through it. Massive objects, thousands of them. traveling in formation. This is what destroyed the Vel'Cathine, Sung said quietly. An invasion fleet from another galaxy. The Vel'Cathine couldn't stop them because they'd grown too comfortable, too set in their ways. By the time they realized they needed to innovate, it was too late. Why does this matter now? Vreln asked. That was 70 million years ago. Because, Sung said, pulling up new data. Humanity's deep space monitoring arrays have detected something similar, coming from the Andromeda Galaxy. And it's heading this way. The room went silent. Everyone stared at the screen, at the data showing coordinated movement across the intergalactic void. Not random exploration. Organized, purposeful, directed. How long? Military Director Xanteth asked. 43 years until they reached the edge of Council space, Sung answered. Give or take. Dae-Hyun felt the floor drop out from under him. Why didn't you tell us sooner? Would you have believed us? Nari asked simply. Before the Time's indomitable will times showed you what human technology could do? Before you understood that we weren't primitive? If we'd come to you 5 years ago and said, an invasion is coming from another galaxy, what would you have done? Vreln had no answer. She was right. They would have dismissed it as fantasy or deception. So what do we do now? Xanteth asked. Now, Nari said, we stop arguing about who's in charge and start preparing. Because in 43 years, none of this will matter if we're all dead. 3 weeks after Sung's announcement, Admiral Kwan stood before the full council assembly. It was the first time a human had addressed the council in an official capacity, and the chamber was packed with representatives from all 12 member species. Kwan was not alone. With her stood Huan, the director of Earth's Deep Space Monitoring Network, and me, humanity's foremost expert on extragalactic civilizations. They brought with them data that would change everything. Ambassador Vreln called the session to order. Admiral Kwan, you requested this emergency session. The Council recognizes you. Admiral Kwan. Admiral Kwan stepped forward. She wore her full military uniform. But her expression was serious, rather than threatening. Members of the Council, I come with a warning and an offer. Humanity has been monitoring deep space for 70 years, using arrays positioned in the intergalactic void. We have detected movement from the Andromeda Galaxy. Me activated a holographic display showing the invasion fleet. The images were clearer now, more detailed. Thousands of massive ships, each the size of a small moon, moving in perfect formation across the empty space between galaxies. These signatures match records from the ancient Vel'Cathine databases, Me explained. We believe this is the same force that destroyed them 70 million years ago. They're not explorers. They're conquerors. They strip civilizations of all resources and move on. A murmur ran through the council chamber. Fear was a tangible presence in the room. How long do we have? Asked Zenthari Council Leader Rendal. 43 years, until they reach the edge of council space, Huan answered. Possibly less if they accelerate. Our projections suggest they're following a route that will bring them through the outer territories first, then toward the core systems. Military Director Xanteth stood. Then we have time to prepare our defenses. The council fleet is powerful. We can. You can't. Kwan interrupted. Not rudely, but firmly. Director, I mean no disrespect, but your fleet as it currently exists cannot stop this invasion. How dare you? Xanteth began, but Vreln raised a hand for silence. Explain, the ambassador said. Huan pulled up tactical simulations. We've run thousands of scenarios based on current council military capabilities. If you face this invasion fleet with your existing technology, your survival probability is 0.00003%. Essentially zero. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Kwan waited for silence before continuing. However, we're not here to tell you that you're doomed. We're here to offer help. Humanity will share technology, tactics, and training with all council species. Not our most advanced systems, but enough to give the galaxy a fighting chance. Why would you do this? Demanded Korvathi Representative Melkor, his skin shifting to suspicious yellow. What do you want in return? Survival, Quan said simply. If the Council falls, our colonies in the dead zones won't be safe either. This invasion fleet will consume the entire galaxy if not stopped. We all survive, or we all die. It's that simple. Nari stepped forward. But there's a condition. The Council must change. The chamber went silent. For 40,000 years, you've maintained a hierarchical structure. Nari continued. Subject species that must ask permission to advance. Restricted development zones. Central control of all major decisions. That system has kept the peace. But it's also kept you weak. The coming war will require every advantage, every innovation, every perspective. You cannot afford to limit your people anymore. You're asking us to dismantle our entire civilization, Vreln said slowly. We're asking you to evolve, Nari corrected. The structure can remain, but the philosophy must change. No more subject species. No more restricted development. Every world must be allowed to reach its full potential. That's the price of survival, Xantath growled. And if we refuse? Quan pulled up more simulations. If you refuse our help and face the invasion alone, survival probability is near zero. If you accept our technology package but maintain your current structure, survival probability rises to about 34%. If we fight together with full integration, including the philosophical changes, survival probability reaches 67%. And if humanity fights alone? Asked Captain Daehyun, who had been watching from the observer section. Quan looked at him with sad eyes. 89%. But by the time we stopped the invasion, millions of council worlds would be destroyed. We didn't spend 3,000 years building our civilization to watch the galaxy burn. We're offering you this deal because we believe the galaxy is worth saving. All of it. We have 40 in all of it. The council debated for 3 days. Behind closed doors, the arguments were fierce. Some species wanted to accept immediately. Others refused to change their fundamental structure. Still others suggested finding a middle ground. Finally, a vote was called. The decision had to be unanimous, or it would tear the council apart. On the third day, Vreln called everyone back to the chamber. Admiral Quan and her team waited while the votes were counted. The council has decided, Vreln announced. We accept humanity's offer, including the required changes to our structure. But we have conditions of our own. Quan nodded. Name them. We want proof that humanity won't use this position to dominate us. We want assurances that this is truly a partnership. Young, Earth's diplomatic envoy, stood. He was older than the others, gray-haired and calm. We offer this. Captain Daehyun of the Korvathi will serve as Joint Commander of the 1st Integrated Defense Fleet, alongside Admiral Quan. They will have equal authority. Commander Ji-won will lead the technology transfer program, working with Council scientists. Your people alongside ours. Equal responsibility. Equal decision-making. The chamber went silent again. Humanity was offering to share not just technology, but command itself. To place their forces under joint leadership with Council officers. This is acceptable, Vreln said after conferring with the other Council leaders. We have a deal. The partnership began immediately. Teams were formed, programs established, and work commenced that would change the galaxy forever. Un and her team of human physicists joined with Council scientists at research stations throughout Council space. The first day was awkward. Council scientists had spent their lives believing they understood the universe. Now they had to admit that their understanding was incomplete, but Un was patient. She didn't mock or belittle. She taught. Look, she said to a group of Zenthari engineers. You created FTL travel independently. That's amazing. You worked within your understanding of physics and made something incredible. We just had different pieces of the puzzle. Together, we'll figure out things neither of us could do alone. Commander Tay began training Council tactical officers in human combat doctrine. The first simulation was a disaster. Council ships fought in rigid formations, following established patterns that had worked for thousands of years. Your enemy won't follow your patterns, Tay explained after the simulation ended in total defeat. You need to be flexible, adaptive. Watch. He ran the simulation again, this time with human tactics. The ships moved in seemingly chaotic patterns, striking from unexpected angles, using the environment creatively. It looked like chaos, but it was controlled chaos. This is madness, a Draken officer protested. There's no order. No structure. There's order, Tay corrected. But it's dynamic order, not static. You react to what the enemy does, not what you plan to do. Try it. Slowly, awkwardly, Council officers began to learn. Sung led expeditions to ancient ruins, both human and Council archaeologists working together. They searched for anything that might give them an advantage. Any piece of lost technology, any forgotten tactic, any clue about how to fight an enemy that had destroyed civilizations before. On one expedition to a dead world in Dead Zone 4, they found something remarkable. An ancient facility, preserved in the frozen atmosphere, containing databases from a civilization that had actually survived the invasion 70 million years ago. They didn't win, Sung explained to the team, but they survived long enough to scatter and hide. Their records show how they did it. They're one. Long. The data was shared immediately across the growing alliance. Juan worked with Council communications experts to expand the deep space monitoring network. More arrays were built, pushed farther into the void. Watching the approaching threat, Me traveled to every major Council world, explaining what was coming and helping prepare civilian populations. It wasn't just military preparation needed. People had to understand what they were facing. Admiral Kwan and Captain Dae Hyun worked together at Unity Station, the new joint command center being built in neutral space. At first, the partnership was awkward. Kwan was used to human efficiency and directness. Dae Hyun was used to Council protocols and careful diplomacy, but they learned from each other. Kwan discovered that Council caution prevented mistakes that human boldness sometimes caused. Dae Hyun learned that human creativity solved problems that Council tradition couldn't handle. We're actually a good team, Dae Hyun admitted one day, after they successfully coordinated a massive joint exercise involving 300 ships from 8 different species. We are, Kwan agreed. Different perspectives, same goal. That's how you win wars. Months became years. The galaxy transformed. Research stations shared data freely. Military forces trained together. Civilian populations prepared for the war everyone knew was coming. And in the deep space arrays, Juan and his team watched the invasion fleet draw closer. They updated their calculations constantly, refining their understanding of the threat. 5 years after Admiral Kwan's speech to the Council, Young stood with Vreln at an observation window on Unity Station. They watched construction ships building the first truly joint human Council warship. It combined the best of both civilizations' technology. We did it, Vreln said quietly. We actually changed. The Council I served 40 years ago wouldn't recognize what we've become. Is that good or bad? Young asked. Both. Neither. Necessary. Vreln turned to face the human diplomat. You saved us, you know. Not from the invasion. From ourselves. We were dying slowly, comfortable in our stagnation. You forced us to grow again. You saved yourselves, Young corrected. We just gave you a reason to change. The hard work, the difficult decisions, those were yours. Below them, Nari worked with G1 and a team of engineers from 5 different species. They were laughing about something. The ease of colleagues who had worked together long enough to become friends. 43 years had seemed like plenty of time when they started. Now, with each passing year, it felt shorter. But the galaxy was preparing. Ships were being built. Tactics were being refined. People were training. The invasion would come. That was certain. But when it arrived, it wouldn't find the galaxy that the invaders expected. It wouldn't find scattered species fighting separately. Easy prey for a coordinated assault. It would find something new. Something that had never existed before in galactic history. Unity. And Admiral Kwan, standing on the bridge of the newly commissioned Joint Dreadnought Times, Hope's Dawn *, smiled as she looked at her mixed crew of humans and council species working together perfectly. "Let them come," she said quietly. "We'll be ready."